Hello everybody and welcome to our talk which is called Going Beyond Course Evaluations, Incremental Steps to Building Comprehensive Quality Enhancement at Module Level. This is a joint talk between myself, Vicky Collins and Sarah Mattin, and you will see us both on these slides. And we are lecturers in EAP at the University of Reading. Our emails are on this slide if you want to contact us further about anything in this talk. Now, the main purpose of this talk is to explore the concept of quality enhancement in the reality of practice at module level. And to do so, firstly, we will set out the context of the module, and then give an overview of the QME structures at the institution where we work and where this particular module sits, and the work that we will explain here in this talk. So QME stands for Quality Management and Enhancement Processes. Now, we've called this talk Why Go Beyond Course Evaluation, so we'd like to discuss the rationale for this, and then appraise our activities against 4 of the institutional QME responsibilities that we think are probably common to your context as well. And then finally to evaluate what is the impact of adopting such an approach to quality enhancement at module level. So in this talk, we'll be focusing on a new component that we conceptualized, and it's called Preparing for Research and Inquiry. So this is in fact a module within the pre-sessional English language program and was delivered last year to the 3 programs that you see on your screen here, and it's intended for students going on to postgraduate courses of study. We'll say more about the aims of the course later in this talk. Now, what you can see here are the 4 levels of QME at the University of Reading, probably very similar to your context as well. And this shows you where level 1 at module level sits within the wider hierarchy of the 4 QME responsibilities. And we'll say more later why we focused on the module level enhancement processes.
A full definition of what we mean by quality is complex and beyond the scope of this talk. But it is useful to briefly consider at this point the relationship between quality assurance and quality enhancement, as this is closely related to this paper's claim to go beyond course evaluation. Like many pre-sessional courses, I think, we felt that we were quite robust at scrutinising the end product of course design. We can see here the approaches to course evaluation that were used, and whilst the final point, external accreditation, does add some greater breadth to the mechanisms, overall we can see there's an emphasis on gathering large data sets to assess whether our completed course meets stakeholder satisfaction. Noah Alassi has discussed the differences between quality assurance and quality enhancement. We can see here some of the identified features of quality assurance, and I think it's clear they align with the course evaluation mechanisms being used, in particular the idea of a focus on the past. And then moving now to look at some of the features of quality enhancement, we found these interesting as they suggested that considerations of quality can be embedded in the processes of course design and course delivery. And we're now going to move on to looking at how quality assurance and quality enhancement were addressed in the design of our new pre-sessional module.
Okay, so what you will see here are 4 of the institutional QME responsibilities at module level. The first one is setting the aims and learning outcomes, ensuring that the module provides a high quality student academic experience, ensuring that the delivery of the module facilitates achievement of the stated learning outcomes, and then monitoring the performance of the module and the attainment of its learning outcomes. There are in fact 9 institutional QME responsibilities set out by the University of Reading. We've just focused on 4 here that we think are common to probably the context you're working in as well. And although there are possibly constraints and affordances for pre-sessional English language programs to align themselves more with the practices of the wider university, we think when it comes to QME that the institutional responsibilities provide a very clear framework by which to set the work and monitor components or courses within a pre-sessional English language course. And to not do so means that we're sitting on the boundaries or the periphery of what the rest of the university is doing in terms of QME. So we're going to first focus on setting the aims and learning outcomes and how this is realised in the context of this particular module. So quality in course design means ensuring that the aims of the module are suitable and meet the expectation of students and staff and accrediting bodies as well as the institution. What you can see here are 3 levels of consultation that we looked at to determine the aims and learning outcomes of the newly developed module. So at the first level, the macro level, we ensured that the aims were aligned with the principles set out by Barleap in ensuring that the course represented the academic context and developed students' academic language and literacy skills required to function in their destination courses. Now this led us in turn to consult at the meso level, so alignment with the values and goals of the institution. And then finally at the micro level to understand more about the written genres that students would encounter in their target destination courses. So in all, there was a very strong connection between the module and these 3 levels of expectations, and this became a decisive element for its quality and its relevance. So that brings us on to briefly describe the aims of the newly developed module. So it is called Preparing for Research and Inquiry, as we previously mentioned. And the core aims are to develop the skills and language relevant to students entering postgraduate study in the UK, with input on language to describe, compare and evaluate research, becoming aware of general research methods, being able to apply a criteria to critically evaluate research articles, use of the institutional library tools to search for related research articles in their intended discipline. And then the final summative assessment is a critical review of 3 empirical articles in the student's intended academic field. And the work on this module was initiated in 2018.
So we're moving on now to look at the second responsibility, which is around ensuring the module provides a high quality student academic experience. The word academic is key here, as this takes us beyond the idea of student satisfaction and turns the focus on the teaching and learning processes. The diagram shows 3 key stages in the life cycle of the module, and we're going to look at how we integrated a focus on quality at each stage. Firstly, during the course design stage, we ensured the task was piloted by both teachers and near-peer students. That is, students who were currently or who had recently studied on a pre-sessional. Attempting the task ourselves initially allowed us to refine the assignment brief to make sure it was clear and aligned with the course aims. We produced sample writing, which could be slightly modified and integrated into the materials. And we were able to reflect on our processes and the output as writers, and then think about the skills and knowledge needed from a student and a teacher perspective. We held focus groups with students to gather their feedback about the task once they'd carried out the pilot. And this again gave us useful feedback and confirmation the task was achievable, as well as engaging for students. And again, from the student writing process, we had sample materials that could be used to set the benchmark for grading. In our case, the involvement of students at course design was small scale, but it did give us a replicable model for an approach with future projects. Moving on to consider the processes during the course, we were able to observe teachers and students working with the materials by focusing our standard observations on this module. Post-observation reflected meetings really enabled useful peer-to-peer discussion around the teacher's experiences with the materials. And in a similar vein, we also encouraged teachers to note down feedback during the course in any way that they found useful and easiest, so annotating the materials, for example. And this produced some very rich feedback that teachers shared with us and that we were able to refer to when reviewing the course. And then finally, the module was evaluated using the existing mechanisms described previously. And as you would expect after these stages, there was a period of consolidation and updating of the materials to address the points raised. We're moving on now to consider the third responsibility, which is around ensuring that the delivery of the module helps achieve the stated learning outcomes. We identified two main challenges for module delivery. Firstly, we needed to ensure consistency across a large teaching team during the summer. Secondly, we had to think about the sustainability of the course. It has a discipline-specific element, so what would happen if the institutional context shifted and the student cohort changed? Related to this, we were also aware of academic integrity considerations, so the potential for task responses to be recycled across cohorts and years. To address the first concern, we focused on the teacher experience from the beginning of the course design process, and we produced induction materials as an integral part of the final output of our course design project. We also addressed the sustainability of the course through its design. The course consists of a central core of teaching materials with a reading list that can be refreshed each year. So you can see here the students begin the task by picking a target article from a list which can be updated as often as needed. This improves the longevity of the task and helps design out opportunities for recycling of task responses.
So let's consider now the final QME responsibility, which is monitoring the performance of the module and the attainment of learning outcomes. How was this realised in the context of this module? So the following indicators can assist on measuring student learning on a module. And in the case of this particular module, evidence of learning was captured at points in the course. So, for example, student performance between submitted stages of the critical review, or their oral communication around the critical review in the final week. And then there is the direct evidence of learning. So a comparison of the performance across the cohort within the same year, as well as a comparison of the performance with a previous assessment, so the assessment that this particular module replaced. So it's that point that we'll start with first. Okay, so let's look at monitoring the performance in comparison with the previous assessment. Now, the critical review, which was the summative assessment for this particular module, replaced an extended writing assignment known as Project in 2019. And it's quite beneficial to compare results with a previous assessment because what we wanted to do was to ensure that present and future cohorts of students were not significantly disadvantaged by a change in the assessment type. And here we can see a comparison of the grades for the project and a grade for the critical review. Now, the majority of students on both are achieving a B grade. That's 71% are achieving a B grade, which in many contexts would be between 60 and 69% in the critical review. There may be a few reasons for that. So we can see overall the grades are more clustered on the critical review. And this could be because the task is more prescribed. There is a determined structure. An initial reading list is supplied, and there is deep analysis of exemplar critical reviews. In comparison, the extended writing piece known as project was very much an open task, with students choosing their own topic, their own question, their own reading materials, their own thesis, and shaping this into their own organisation, although the overall genre was an essay. On both tasks, we can see that there are groups of students that are achieving the top grade, so that would be 70% or above, or in this case, an A grade. So we can see that it's not an unachievable task. Now, the other way of comparing the results across these two assessments is what steps are needed to achieve the outcome. Now, the critical review, 85% of students were achieving an A or a B grade, so 60% and above, with 2 submissions of work, so a draft piece and then the final submission. Fewer students are achieving these grades on the project task, and it actually took them 3 submissions to achieve this. And finally, if we look at that comparison within the same cohort, so this is a sample of 140 students that undertook the summative assessment of the critical review in 2020, we can see that there's enough students that are significantly achieving 50% or more, which on their postgraduate courses would be the pass mark. And again, there are enough students to show that a top grade is also achievable. So what we have all together here is a good basis now by which to continue monitoring the performance year on year.
Having given an overview of our incremental steps approach, in this final section of the talk, we'll consider the impacts of the approach we took. These impacts can be considered in 3 broad categories, with potential benefits for students, teachers, and course leaders and designers. As mentioned previously, alignment with institutional quality processes can help mitigate the risk of EAP occupying a marginal space. There's also important benefit for students regarding their preparation for UK postgraduate study. Moving on to the second point, we discussed previously that quality enhancement tends to be more focused on the present and the future, and the approach we took enabled us to move away from focusing on retrospective student satisfaction and more towards future-focused emphasis on academic quality. The point about sustainability here is also important, as it's more efficient to front-load and design in quality than to fix issues when they arise later on. There was also an enhanced focus on the teaching and learning processes by adopting this approach. We focused from the very start on the teacher and student academic experience to make sure the course could be delivered to meet its aims. Both the process and the outputs, such as the teacher induction material we discussed earlier, these both give us replicable models for future course design projects. And finally, here are some of the key works we've referred to in this talk. Thank you very much for listening.